Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I'm speaking to filmmaker Jake C. Young. Jake's made and released a bunch of genre movies. He's also even sold Blu-rays of his work through Makeflix and has a deal to get some of his films out on Blu-ray in supermarkets in the US. His films are funded through Indiegogo, so we talked a bit about crowdfunding, how he approaches that and his tips. And we also talked about sales and distribution, so he's gone through a regular distributor and he's also done self-distribution. Enjoy. I'll start where I start with most people. Tell me a little bit about how you started making micro-budget feature films.
Yeah, so I started making feature films probably when I was about 13 years old. It all kind of started with one of those gigs where it's like your parents get you that camcord for Christmas, and then you just get a big imagination as it goes on. And for about 10 years now, I've had success with making film. I started just getting involved. I went to college, and just started making film from the time I was a kid all the way up until I was an adult. And the way I best describe it is it was just kind of like a kid that never got to grow up. So you just kind of take things along the line, and I kind of come from a background of that in my family, with being kind of involved in film and stuff, and the rest was just kind of history. I just kind of got involved and started making film. I didn't get a lot in big studios, so I just started kind of doing them myself, and the rest just kind of happened, and ever since I've been doing it.
And what was your first feature film, first feature project you directed?
So that's kind of an unfair question. So
Right,
when
right. Why is it
yeah,
unfair?
yeah. Well, because when I first started doing it, I made so many films, and like so many of them never saw the light of day. Because
Okay,
because when you start doing a lot of film, you just you start somewhere kind of on a low scale. But the first major film I done was probably a student film. I done it when I was in college. It was a featurette based off of the old Robin Hood legends, and I kind of done that, and then I started doing a few other feature films, and then as it kind of came about, I ended up getting connected with a guy that used to be a pro wrestler, and I was working on this little feature, kind of at my house on my own, and he wanted to be a part of it, and it just kind of came about, and it currently is what is called Screecher of the Lagoon, which is on Tubi and a lot of other stuff. It's Screecher of the Lagoon Ultimate Director's Cut. I
ultimate
mean, you do
director's
it.
cut. Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was so bad. And it was super low budget, super indie. But that was kind of that was the first big thing that I had done. As it progressed, I started learning a lot more and started just making a lot more films. And that one was it was kind of a learning experience. It was very low budget. It actually didn't even get that name. It was originally released as Screecher, and no one wanted it. And like, I ended up getting it through another distributor that took on a two-movie deal because I had made another film that they wanted, but they didn't want that one.
Right.
So I told them, I was like, look, I was like, if you guys want that, I said, is there any way I can get this released? And they said, fine, we'll just take a chance on it. And when they did, to date, that is still the most that is the film that has made me probably the most residuals to date, off of
Really?
that film. Yeah, and it was crazy because it was just super low budget, and it was super just like super silly. I was in my 20s when I done it, like very very early on. So
Hmm.
it was a learning curve.
Learning, yeah, always is, isn't it, on that first feature film? And did you, with the films you've made since, so you mentioned there that you had a distributor for that. Where are you now? Are you now Film Hub releasing yourself, or are you going through distributors, sales agents? What's your current situation?
So my current that I'm doing a lot is I do both actually.
Mm.
I've learned a lot in the last few years on doing my own marketing for my films, kind of doing my own releasing. I've found ways to broker deals. Because when you're an independent filmmaker, you wear every hat. I mean, there's nothing that you don't do. You're not just a filmmaker. You're not just a director. You're filmmaker, director, sales agent. All the above.
And you're an actor
Um,
as
yeah,
well. You're
yes,
independent.
yes. Don't forget that one. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I've kind of found some success with the distributor that I used in the past. Now I've kind of done sort of my own thing. I've tested out Film Hub. I'm still kind of murky in the waters on that, but I've done a lot of different distribution routes, and so far I've found several of them to be somewhat successful.
Right. Okay. So you've had a good direct with a distributor relationship as far as actually making some money goes.
Yeah, yeah, and it's we never make nothing crazy as an indie
Mm.
filmmaker. You never make anything that's just wow, but you get the chance to make something off of a film that you put a lot of hard work into, so blood, sweat, and tears. So it's nice to feel that payoff after you've put all that work into it, to know it's actually doing something.
Yeah. And this is the question filmmakers always ask. Two questions is how what sort of budgets are you working at and what are you shooting on?
So I worked with all kinds of different budgets, and so far I've been successful for about 10 years to be able to do this. So I work on a lot of my films. Like I just done one with this one here, if you can see it.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I just done it. It just went to Tubi, just went to Amazon. Had Tuesday Night from Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, I learned a way to not let my budget necessarily constrain me,
Hmm.
because I found that sometimes you can, as a filmmaker, you use the resources that are available to you. For instance, my last film, I think I made it for like $7,000, and that was just running off of a Indiegogo, and just getting some crowdsourcing. But I've got the chance to work with people like Diane Franklin, Tuesday Night, Brian Bremer, Nancy Ritter from Scream, like a lot of really cool people. Just because sometimes you can find different ways to make sure that your financial situation doesn't limit your creativity. So that's my advice to anybody who's a filmmaker and is thinking about that. Definitely just go for it, because sometimes you never know what's going to happen until you actually try to do it, and you never know. I mean, they might say yeah and they might say no. I mean, and if they pass on your film, I mean, at least you tried, at least you got it that far. So that's kind of a really big step, and that's what I tell everybody. Just kind of have an idea. Don't go crazy with your budget. Like, it's going to be $1 million to make a movie. I mean, yeah, that would be nice, but think realistically. But don't let money ever restrain your creativity, because your creativity, you can do virtually anything when you put your mind to it. And I've seen movies that are filmed in a basement, that look better than a multi-million dollar blockbuster Hollywood budget film. I mean, it's all about what you use around you. To answer your second question, what am I shooting on? So a lot of people have asked me that over the years, and I have upgraded. So as a filmmaker, anybody who does anything camera related, you know the struggle. You know what it's like trying to find the best. Is it the Red? Is it Canon? Is it Black Magic? What is the ultimate camera? So what I have found is I actually shoot on Sony FX 700, or
Yep.
AX 700, my bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Sony AX 700, which is actually like a glorified camcorder. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, but you can't do the interchangeable lenses and all that." Well, these cameras, they're compact, because if you're like me, I do a lot of run and gun guerrilla filmmaking. So I know the importance of having to kind of just leave what you're doing to get that perfect shot. You've got to be able to get in the trenches, and if you're packing a lug of camera gear around, it's really hard. Now, I'm not saying those are bad cameras by any means, but am saying you need to find your niche when it comes to camera and do what is most comfortable for you. And I found that with doing that myself, working with other filmmakers, we've all kind of got our own feel, our own vibe to what we like with the camera. So far, I've been very pleased with the Sonys that I've been using. I've got two of them, two of the big AX 700s. They they can do 4K. They can shoot in RAW. They can shoot in S-Log to match up with Blackmagic. But they produce a very high quality image. It's very good to go in and work with later on. And what my B cam that I have found has been the most useful on the most recent project I just done has been actually the iPhone.
Right. Okay.
So I remember being young when I started doing this. It was like, everybody's an indie filmmaker now because they've got a camera on their phone, and you used to laugh at that. But these cameras that are on these new iPhones have evolved so much to where
Mm.
they take lenses. I mean, they shot what is it, 28 years later, completely on an iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I have found that it's very useful as a tool to be able to use when you've got to be more mobile. I've got a uh, I've got a little rig that I use for the phone. I used it as a B cam in this last film, just kind of testing it out, and I mean, it just really blew me away with the image quality that it produced. I mean, I'm shooting with a like a $1,500 camera, two of them that are just and that's bare bones, not counting all the rig accessories I put on. Um, and it's pairing up perfectly with those, and that's just coming straight out of an iPhone. So that's mind blowing to me that you can get that. But I find those are very two handy tools for a filmmaker. You can put your phone in the cinematic mode, drop your frame rate down to 24 frames per second, and you've got a very decent looking shot. Now the depth can be it can be a little bit to play with sometimes on an iPhone because you sometimes you get the whole outline of a depth of field blur, but you can adjust that. So you can actually I shot an entire scene um, in this last film I just done at an old abandoned western town because you have to hike to get to it. So we had to hike for like 2 or 3 miles to get to this place. And so we have like the costume accessories and a backpack. And, you can't take a big camera all the way up a mountain like that. You're going to be exhausted. So we took the iPhone and man, the shots turned out really great. I mean, phenomenal. And, as a filmmaker, uh, I think one of your best friends as a filmmaker, especially in indie film, is all about color grading. Color grading and editing are your best friends if you want a good quality looking image, I feel. I've been very successful so far with the films I've done, and you're always going to critique yourself. Like, I definitely feel that all my films can be better, and any filmmaker is always going to pick their own work apart. But I think as a indie filmmaker, a lot of people they neglect to talk so much about color grading, and you could really have a terrible camera and color grade it, and you could really pull out a fine product.
Yeah, and it can get you out of jail in a lot of instances, match things up. And to your point on using a phone, that's only going to get better, isn't it? With phone technology, the current iPhones are doing so many things. They're steadying the shot for you. They're adding post steady to it. So I'd almost love to shoot a feature on an iPhone, save all that equipment, and just kind of do something that's a bit more maybe conversational with some good performances in it. You also mentioned Indiegogo. So, is crowdfunding where you usually raise finance for your films? Is that the main source of finance you use?
So I found that is probably the best source of financing that you can do, mostly because Indiegogo has algorithms that if you can follow them and learn how to beat them, your project can be recommended to other filmmakers and other people who are there to donate and to try to help people. And it also boils down to making good connections. If you network with enough people in filmmaking, that I feel that's what makes you successful is by networking with people. You get the ability to make new contacts. And sometimes those people, just because you met them and they support you, they'll throw $5 your way, or, and it could even be $2, as small as a cup of coffee, because as an indie filmmaker, every cent counts. Every little thing counts. And, you never take that for granted. So I have found it's been the most successful. If you can learn to use Indiegogo to beat certain algorithms, I think that you can really do some good. I've seen people raise from as much as 18,000 to as little as $300. Just depends on your goal for your campaign and how hard you want to push that.
And if, say, I was a filmmaker, I was going to do my first feature, I'm going to use Indiegogo. What are your tips for using Indiegogo, and how do we beat the algorithm? Is there a secret recipe? What's the trick?
There's definitely a secret recipe, but that is something that I feel that many people don't know about. It is something that you've got to work for a long time with that. And luckily, I've been able to meet some experts that kind of do that stuff. So if you're a first time filmmaker and you wanted to use that, first thing I would do would be to create a very strong campaign. You want to have a campaign that's got good targeted images. You want to have a really good proof of concept, and you want to have some perks that are, kind of fall in line of something that isn't very generic, but is also something that's not like crazy out there that nobody's going to want to buy. You got to think realistically. So I would definitely offer up saying, make sure you got a good campaign, make sure you got a lot of good images, a lot of good poster art, and always be reaching out to people. I mean, I don't care who they are. I mean, what are they? At the end of the day, the worst thing someone can do is tell you no. And, I've found that if I ask even just for a like and a share, sometimes that encourages people to want to go and donate or follow, because, there's ways to do things without actually being a nuisance to people. And I know that's what a lot of people think. They're like, oh, what if people think I'm dumb or I'm annoying? I mean, who cares if they think that you didn't need them in your life anyway. So, I mean, that's the best way to look at things. Always be focused on your dreams, and the people who will want to support you will follow. I think if you can share it enough and get enough people on day one to back you, I think you stand a really good chance of your campaign falling in the in demand category. So those are probably three tips that I would recommend to someone who's raising films for their first or raising funds for their first feature. But mostly, don't let that money limit what you can do on a film. I shot a film on once, raised $600 on an Indiegogo for $600 and some favors. I had the film streaming, and I had it in our local theater, and we had outsold every movie that had come into the theater for 2 weeks. I mean, so it's all about what you're willing to do with your creativity, and what kind of shots you're willing to do, because people believe in what they see, so give them something to believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed on one of your posts with the film, I don't know if this is the film you've just released, Daylight to Dark, or if it's an old one. I think it's Daylight to Dark. You've done a Blu-ray release through
Yeah.
Makeflix. Is
hmm
that, I've not used that. What is Makeflix? Is this something you have just done kind of separate of your other releases? So this is, I'm assuming you've put the film yourself up on Film Hub and you're also doing your own Blu-ray release. Has that proved profitable? What made you go down that route?
So with Makeflix, it's a captivative culture for collectors. Makeflix ships. I think they ship internationally. They are a collectors cultivating. They release Blu-rays for horror fans and people that are fans of occult movies, just like films that that a lot of indie filmmakers make. Um, Fortunately, I know the owner of it, and I sent him my product, and he thought it was really good, and he's allowed me to share that with him, on a revenue split basis, no upfront cost other than the material itself. So yeah, I have found that to be profitable, just because it is an even, profit sharing base. I have been able to work with a few other sales agents and a few other companies who have helped me get my Blu-rays released directly to most major online retail stores. Daylight to Dark not only will be released on Makeflix, but it'll also be released in like online retailers such as Walmart, Target, Barnes and Noble, Best Buy, etc. And honestly, that just came down to networking. That's not a magical secret that I can just say, hey guys, here's where you got to go to do that. That's kind of just become over time. Networking and getting in front of the right people, getting your stuff in front of the right people, meeting the right people when you go to a con, passing your stuff out, and trying to make yourself be known. Just to network with other people, and you'll find that there's a lot of other really cool people out there that are eager to work with you. Sometimes you'll get some no's, and sometimes people will be like, buzz off. But like I said, they're like that. You don't need them in your life anyways. So you'll find that there are a lot of really cool people out there at some of these events that are that really want the chance to work with you. So I tell everybody, if you get the chance, definitely network with those individuals.
Yeah, definitely. It's always worth spreading the word, although it can, like you say, sometimes you can get that self-embarrassment. It's probably different for you because you're an actor, so you're probably used to putting yourself out there. But as a director, filmmaker who's maybe not used to being on screen, it might take a bit of confidence to just, go up to people and tell them about your project. But you've got to get there and you've got to be
Well,
excited about it.
the best way to do that I found as a filmmaker, I'm actually terrible at this. So I actually am very terrible. I've been fortunate enough. My wife goes to a lot of cons with me, and she actually initiates conversations with people
Really,
because she's
that's
a lot better at
interesting.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'll initiate conversations with people, and then I'll be like walking around. I'll come up, and she'll be like, "Hey, have you met so and so?" And it's like, "Oh, well, that's crazy." But the best other thing I can do, so is let's say you're just a an average guy, you're wanting to make a feature, but you're scared to death. Well, you got to remember, can't never could. But so if you don't do this, you run the risk of never making the film that you want, never getting those resources that you want. And sometimes, like I said, it's really worth just going up and talking to people because you're gonna find 90% of the time people are more supportive than they are not. So you've got to kind of just, get in that mindset and take that little leap of faith and be like, I can do this. And you're going to have to promote your film anyway. So, why not go ahead and do it now? Why not get ahead of the curve and, meet some people that can help you promote your film? So that's the way you got to look at it. It can be a little nerve wracking. And as an actor, it's actually not that difficult to talk to people. But sometimes, I tell everybody it's very different talking to people face to face than it is doing something in front of a camera because when you're shooting a film in front of a camera, you can always say I messed up, cut. When you're talking to a real person, you can't say I messed up, cut. No, you got to keep going with it. So I really admire stage actors and people that do that as well because they're witty. They can kind of come up with stuff on the spot. So I really admire people that can do that. And I definitely think that people who just believe in themselves a little bit. And if you got a dream and you're passionate about it, you'll do what you got to do to make it happen. So no matter what that is. So I think you'll find for most up and coming filmmakers, man, if you just say, hey, I'm Jake, this is a project I got going on. Would love to work with you sometime or love to collaborate, and that comes off a little more professional. And I have found that it also comes off a little less creepy, when you're at a con, like you don't want to just walk up, hey, I'm so and so, tell them your name, address, blood type, all that, it's
Yeah.
you kind of just want to, be like, hey, I'd love to collaborate. So those are definitely some little helpful tips and tricks that I think indie filmmakers could try.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also that having the confidence to talk to people, it's kind of like a muscle that you need to, the more you do it, the less self-conscious you become and the more easier it is for you to talk to people. And like you say, the ones who aren't interested, you just move on, leave them alone, move on. Um, so you mentioned promotion there. Uh, what are your tips for promoting your movies, for getting people? Because one of the things I always say is that sometimes the hardest people to get to watch your film are friends and family. Oh yeah, I'll
For
get round
sure.
to it. I'll watch it. I'll watch it tomorrow. So you really need to push your promotion out further than that. So what are your tips for promoting your films? What do you do?
Well, Jim, you made a really good point there because the hardest thing to do ever is getting your friends and family to watch that because mostly they know you, so they assume that that's always going to be there, right? So they don't necessarily just starve to go watch your films. However, I've found if you try to place yourself in certain groups, and social media makes this so much easier than it used to be. Social media is a tool, and as a filmmaker, that is a tool you need to use. You have to utilize that. You have to make your reach big. You have to focus on getting known. So the more known that you are, whenever you put something out, you're going to find that people that support you are going to want to watch your stuff. And you got to look at that too from a business perspective. Well, the more people that watch my stuff, well, that's more time stream. More time stream means more ads. More ads means more money. So you have to think, the more that I put myself out advertising and just posting and posting, tag whoever, go to different groups in Facebook, join them. Join every group you can in Facebook and is in a niche of what you do. If you're horror, do horror, independent films and horror. Do action, independent films and action. Surround yourself with like-minded individuals who want to watch your stuff, because I watch indie films all the time, and friends of mine who put it out, I mean, and especially when they put out something that's just a banger, I'm like, absolutely, I would love to watch that. And I've had the opportunity to host film festivals and stuff and get to see a lot of really, really talented people, a lot of really cool stuff just by association. So I definitely would say, as far as marketing, sometimes just market company to market for you.
Okay. And then just thinking in terms of looking back on everything now, what do you wish you'd known when you started making films?
Oh man, what did you wish you know when you started making films? As far as what I've learned, I don't necessarily know that I would have done a whole lot different, because as you learn, this should always be your goal. Each film should be better than the last one. Each film should get better and better and better. You got to think, every time you make a film, well, this is basically a sequel to the one you just made. And the idea of a sequel, and I feel like this is what a lot of Hollywood producers get wrong, you can't repeat the first thing, you have to top the first thing. So by topping the first thing, you have to create something that's just going to blow people out of the water. So I feel that that would have been a helpful tip to know had I been, in my earlier years. But I had also wished that I had kind of known that in this business, you got to be very cautious of people. You have to be very cautious of people who want to help you and people who pretend that they want to help you. And that's true. I mean, there's a lot of people who will pretend to be your friend in this industry who want to ride your coattails when you start making a little bit of success. And that's what I tell everyone. Always be very cautious of who you allow in your circle, because as you get these new contacts, as you're networking with people, you have to realize that not everyone there are your friends. And sadly, a lot of people they're there, they see you as competition. And unfortunately, that's really sad that certain people make that way, because I feel as an independent filmmaker and what I have learned from my own personal experience, and I will tell every person that's listening, be supportive. Be supportive of your other indie filmmakers. Be supportive of people who are doing what you're doing. And I promise you, I can promise you that you are going to be received with so much kindness and so many people. That's a big part of people watching your stuff, is being supportive of their stuff. And the more supportive you are and the friendlier and kinder that you try to be to people, the more that it's going to help you in the long run. So if there is one thing that I wish I had known, it would have been to be cautious, but also remember, always be friendly. Always, always support your fellow filmmakers.
Yeah. And it's a weird one, that, because I've experienced that in the past, that sense of, especially indie filmmaking, competition. Oh, I can't tell you about that because I'm doing, very protective with things, not very collaborative. Um, what would you say? Because it sounds like you've had that experience yourself. Um, what are the markers, or what are the things you should look out for in people who haven't got your best interests at heart, do you think?
So usually the people that don't have your best interest at heart will be the ones who are striving to prove to you that they do have your best interest at heart.
Right, okay.
Because yeah, 100%. Because I've had really good friends in this industry, or people that I thought were friends, to like completely they'll like turn on you, like because this is one thing. People see success and they think that person's successful, and unfortunately, a lot of people who have this inner jealousy. They develop a jealousy that eats at them because they feel that you've been successful and they're not. And that happens vice versa too. I mean, because we've all been guilty of feeling jealous of another person's work at some time. But there's a way that you can still be envious, but you shouldn't hate them for their accomplishments. And what you got to look out for is, people that are on the same wavelength. Look for people that support you as much as you try to support them, because those people are the people that you want on your side. People that just want to kind of get in your circle without necessarily doing any of the work, that is something that should always be a red flag. I mean, because there are a lot of people who will just join your crew. I've had camera guys, I've had assistant directors, and people who want to be a part of what you're doing up until the money factor comes in, and then you've got people that feel that a form of a jealousy because they're not getting what they feel that they deserve. And it's always very important. And I tell anybody who's directing a film, this is stuff I've had to learn through the years. Always, always continue to brag on your actors, because this is one thing as a director you forget to do, just because you get so busy working, trying to monitor your things, trying to monitor the set. You forget to brag on your actors, and you forget to brag on your camera guys, your PAs. And remember, no one person is greater than the other. No one person that is making a film, the camera guy is not greater than the actor, even if they're a celebrity. Because without that camera guy, that celebrity would just be a person walking around and nobody would ever see them. Because you've got to have a village. And so I feel it's very important to always make sure that your cast and crew know how appreciated they are. So always be on the lookout for people who don't let you know how appreciated that they are of your service, because those are people that unfortunately might be taking your stuff for granted. And you've gotta. I seen that. It seems like you've been there down that road before.
Yeah, I think I think I'm probably, or I used to be, a bit more gullible with that kind of stuff, in that I would always sort of see the better side of someone, and I would over and over again fall for uh that kind of thing where I would, oh well, yeah, well, they don't mean this, that's not, I'd kind of see the best in people. But I think
Yeah,
as I've got older, I've maybe become a little bit more suspicious. Uh, and like you say, it's just trying to figure out what those behaviors are that make you think, oh, that person's not really got my best interest at heart. They're just
hmm
using me as a stepping stone, or they're just kind of using me for information. And that relationship's a lot more transactional than it is sort of co-beneficial. It's all about what can you give me, and how's that going to help me progress. Um,
absolutely,
but
absolutely.
it's an interesting it's interesting that that happens in indie filmmaking a lot, I think.
It does, and I think it's because there's so many people that, rather than pertain to a love of film, more they're more trying to climb a
Mm.
ladder to get to where they want to be, instead of remembering that everyone's on the same team. You can't play against your team, and like I said, it takes a village. Um, and in indie filmmaking, I found that people's knowledge of what they want begins to expand. Have you ever heard the old saying, "Don't let that go to your head"? I mean, everyone's heard that, but sometimes it does happen, especially in indie filmmaking. Things go to people's heads like super quick, and when that happens, people begin to lose sight and begin to lose what the luster of that film was to begin with. It's no longer a project. It becomes a command, and you don't want to command. You want to work on a project, or like you said, how many people are looking to just use you as a stepping stone or pump you for information, listen, I think it's a really good thing to have information, but never play all your cards up front. You never want to tell everybody everything up front. You always want to have a little bit until you get to know that person. And then if they're the same way that you are and you're the same collaborative, absolutely. I mean, see if they want to collaborate with you and help people. But I find it's very beneficial. The more helpful that you are to people and the more supportive you are to people and the more that you try to help people, you're going to be received in that same way.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in hearing from another writer, actor, director, then you can check out the episode with Dzifa Mallet. He's made a film that's just hit Tubi. It's done really well on Tubi. It's called Remedy for a Broken Heart. And it's really interesting to hear from him how he put that project together and some of the things he learned making it.